I'm here with my colleagues, Bianca Alston and Edward Jones. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves really quickly?
Good, yeah.
Hi, this is Bianca Alston. You can direct any of your questions to me. I'll be receiving your applications, and we're really looking forward to next year's class, and thank you for your interest.
Great, and this is Edward Jones, Programs for ABFE, and we're glad to have you all online. It's the first time that we've decided to do this kind of a Q&A opportunity to get folks that are kind of coming to understand a little bit more about the fellowship program, giving you an opportunity to ask some of those questions with live folks. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you and hopefully helping you process this application so that you can submit it for us. Take it away, Lynn. Thanks.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody. I just want to take you through a couple of housekeeping opportunities. You can, at any time, submit a question or a chat to Bianca. She's going to be feeding those while I'm talking. You also have the ability, I believe, to raise your hand with a question while we're talking. So at any point, as we're kind of going through this little presentation, please feel free to ask a question if you have it. I'm going to check in with Bianca periodically, and then when we get to the end of the little presentation, we'll open up the microphones and let everybody ask questions that they have. So thank you, guys. We are incredibly excited because the class of 2015-2016 will be the 10th class of Connecting Leaders Fellows, and our 100th fellow will be one of whoever in the class. So this is a really powerful year for us, and we're wonderfully excited. I just want to give you a brief overview of what you can expect in the fellowship itself. It kicks off with what we call our Leadership Summit. It's a week-long experience in a major city, and we'll be going to Minneapolis, Minnesota this year. The week is October 26th to the 30th. Typically, Monday is a travel day, and we start first thing in the morning, like really first thing in the morning on the Tuesday. We try to finish up by early afternoon on the Friday so that everyone who wants to can get back home for their weekend. It is a jam-packed week going morning till nighttime. We feed you. We have a great time to get together and bond, and we also learn a lot. As part of the fellowship, each fellow will have a personal leadership assessment and a 360, and this is an opportunity for you to take some internationally recognized tools to learn more about your own leadership style and communication style, your emotional intelligence, and your motivators. In addition, you'll do a 360 where you will provide us with people, your managers, some direct reports, peers, people who know you from a lot of different ways. And all of that information, your own assessment and the 360 assessment, really come into play when you start working with your executive coach. That gives you the data point, the foundation from which to begin to do your work. And it is incredibly robust, and I can't emphasize enough what a huge gift to your own professional development this will be. You will have, each fellow has individualized executive coaching. It's 10 hours of coaching. It starts out with a sort of a pre-coaching conference. You have a 2-hour walkthrough of your 360 and personal leadership assessment. And then you have 7 monthly additional coaching hours. You'll establish a coaching plan with your coach, and then you'll work your plan with your coach. In addition to that monthly appointment, and that's usually done by Skype or phone call, we have a monthly fellows call where your whole cohort will be on the phone. Some months we just do a group check-in where we're sharing with each other what's been going on, how we're using our coaching, other kinds of things like that. And then some months we invite guest speakers, people from the ABFE Pantheon to come in and talk to us about their own leadership experiences, to talk to us about different aspects of philanthropy that we may want to dig into to understand better. So it's a great, robust, informative hour that gets you guys connected again, even though we're all remote, and then also introduces you to a lot of folks in the ABFE network. At the annual conference every year, we have a gathering both with the current class. It's sort of our little moment of graduation. And in addition, we invite all the alumni from the fellowship to come back for a reception. So it's a great time, and again, a great way for you to connect with other folks in our leadership network. I can tell you that while we haven't planned it yet, this event next year, because it will be the 10th anniversary, and this class will represent the 100th fellow. It's going to prove to be a wonderful and very exciting celebration. And the last piece of the Connecting Leaders Fellowship is what we call the Community-Based Learning Project. And this is an opportunity for you to design something in your home community where you get to exercise your leadership. Sometimes folks have done it in conjunction with their work. Sometimes folks have done it in addition to their work. Some fellows find that their particular foundation or their particular portfolio doesn't really allow them to really dig into the questions and issues concerning the Black community in their area that they would like to. And so your community-based learning project is a way for you to try something out. And to take all these principles that you're learning both through ABFE and through the coaching and put it to work in some way in your community. And we can provide examples of different kinds of things that have been done over the years, but it is an opportunity to exercise these new principles of leadership that we are encouraging you to engage in. Let me pause here for a second. Edward, do you want to add anything to this overview? And Bianca, I'll let you let us know if there are any questions that anybody has out there, and I'll just take a little pause.
Thank you, Lynn. And just the fact that one thing that I'm constantly hearing, and I've only been with ABFE for over a year, although I've known of ABFE for the 13 plus years I've been in philanthropy. Just one thing that's constantly reiterated in my experiences, and even since the conference that we had in Napa a couple of weeks ago, is that this really does generate a space that I don't know of existing elsewhere in the field. It creates this cohesion and this opportunity for folks to really be connected with peers in ways that aren't often desired, but not often realized in philanthropy, just given the real lack of diversity within the field itself. So it's one of those intangible experiences that it's intangible in the sense that you really don't quantify it, but it is invaluable, and it becomes a very meaningful experience as people walk through and come through the process. And I've constantly heard folks talk about just how unique an experience it has been for them, and it's been a resource that they lean on throughout their career in a lot of different ways. So that gets beyond the kind of the schedule of the experience. It's really that piece that is definitely one that's more internal, and it gets beyond the perfunctory work aspects of it all.
Great, thanks. Bianca, do we have any questions just yet?
Hi, Lynn. No questions have been asked through the queue as of yet.
All right, great. Let's move on. All right, so here are a little bit about the objectives for the Connecting Leaders Fellowship. You'll get used to this acronym CLFP. Our operating definition is really that leadership is an action, not a position. And so anyone can lead at any time from anywhere. So we're really pulling ourselves into a new definition of leadership that is not about title, but really is about how we get things done and how we move people and systems in different kinds of ways. So it's a very personal view of leadership. It starts with you and it must engage others. Your purpose must be clear, you know, where do I want this group or this activity to go? And it is risky. I think a lot of times, you know, we whatever you want to say, the nail that sticks up is the one that gets hammered down. You know, we have all these expressions about what it means to take risk. And yet I think all of us can imagine that, you know, very little of meaning has ever happened unless somebody has been willing to take a risk. And often I think what folks find is when they start to do this work, they're amazed at how hungry people are for leadership around them. And when we step out there, others step out there with us. Leadership is actually, in point of fact, morally and ethically neutral. And so we have to choose positive, ethical, and authentic leadership. So that's really where we sort of come from in the fellowship. And a lot of the coaching work and a lot of the conversations we have together as fellows is really helping each of us to tap into our own authentic leadership style. Some of us are quiet leaders, some of us are talkative leaders, some of us are doers and like to be out there in front. Others are those great team players that make the trains run on time. A lot of times what happens is that we're not always recognized for the leadership that we bring, and we want to help you be able to bring that out in a more transparent and forceful way, which we have found over the years allows people to be recognized for the strengths that they bring. And so what we see is when people are really confident about their own leadership style and know how to work it, we're finding dramatic changes happening in their careers because they're not being overlooked, and they know how to advocate for themselves and the issues that they care about. And then we have this sort of chart of competencies. So there's the civic and sector understanding. We really want to understand the complexities of the Black community. How did we get here and where do we want to go? And then to really dig into how philanthropy works and what it's capable of doing in order to advance our causes in Black communities. Some of the tools that we use in this area are the Responsive Philanthropy and Black Communities Toolkit, best practices, group calls. We'll often bring folks onto a call who have advanced a different sort of way of using philanthropy to improve the lives of the Black community in their area. And they'll come on and tell you their story. And not only what they're doing, but how they got it to happen. What levers of power did they have to pull? Who did they, you know, how did they manage to get an ally from a board member so that they could push this through their organization? Those kinds of like behind the curtain Wizard of Oz sorts of things we want to be able to look at as well. There's a lot of competency is about building a network and relationships and then really knowing how to use your network. And so we do that through ABFE, through the Black Philanthropic Network, again, through our group calls and mentoring. And we are definitely encouraging a close look at the African American Leadership Forum model, which was born in Minneapolis. And so that's one of the exciting things that we'll be looking at closely when we get to Minneapolis in the fall. Leadership, as I talked about, really understanding leadership, your own personal leadership style and strengths, and then to really gain the confidence you need in leading from whatever position you have, in whatever moment you need to seize from a place of confidence and authenticity. And lastly, this notion of ethics and authenticity, just an opportunity to really think critically and recommit to your personal ethics and values, to really find your authentic voice, both within your organization and within the community, and so that you can be what we call an authentic upstander for Black communities. We know, we can just open up the newspaper and know that we need champions in all sorts of ways at every level of power in the community. And we want to make sure that you know how to be that person. And then lastly, just engagement and action, to find your passion, to activate your network, and to jump in. The Community-Based Learning Project is kind of a little taste test of that during your fellowship year. And then I promise you that ABFE has all sorts of ways for you to continue to stay involved after your fellowship year is done. Edward, let me pop it over to you for a second and see if you want to add anything to this page.
No, that really does sum it up. Thank you. Again, this is a reminder to individuals, if you have any questions, feel free to submit your questions in the chat box. Bianca, has anyone submitted anything just yet?
Not yet, Edward.
All right. We're doing great. We're answering all your questions.
Exactly. We'll assume that means that everyone's getting their answers, their questions answered.
Yeah. So the application process, we do use an online application form. This is a long link, but it's a pretty simple thing. And then we also have posted on the website a PDF that includes everything that you would see online, including the actual essay questions. And we do that so that you have a chance to really think through your what you want to write in your essays, and then when you go online, I actually even encourage you to write the essays in Microsoft Word or something, and then when you're online, you can just cut your answer out of one document and paste it into the online application form. I think you'll find it easier and more easier to edit when you're not online, and just easier just to transfer it into the application process. You can create a username and password to go into your application, and you can go in as often as you want and edit it or change anything up until the deadline at 11:59 on June 1st. So you can go back and forth in there and change it until we close it out on June 1st. As part of the online application, you will upload a copy of your resume, so it'll be in the exact same format that you typically have it in, and then we're also asking you to upload one letter of recommendation. And you can find the link to the application in all sorts of places on the ABFE website, in addition to the PDF that you download that shows you what the essay questions are. And the essays are not terrible, they're not tricky. I'm going to talk about those on the next slide. Let me just go ahead to the next slide. So a little bit of advice from several years of listening to committee members reviewing applications. We don't have an interview process with this, with the fellowship application. So the committee really wants to get to know you. And so I really encourage you to write in your own voice. Sometimes I know we kind of get into our master's degree, what I call philanthropy East talk. And a lot of times that ends up being sort of a barrier to what's really going on with you. And so this is your chance to talk to the committee about what you're thinking about in Black communities, what you're thinking about around issues of leadership, how you think the fellowship can and will be helpful to you in the future. So I just encourage you to use your own voice and really tell your own story. This is a piece of advice that is both for this application process and I would say for anything else that you're doing. Letters of recommendation come in all shapes and sizes and all degrees of informativeness, for lack of a better word. We have a little bit of a formula. We do count the letter of recommendation, not a lot. Obviously, what you have to say about yourself is more important than what somebody you ask says about you. But it is a good opportunity to ask someone to write a letter of recommendation who you feel really knows you and your work and where you want to go and your ambitions. We also would encourage you to have a conversation with your recommender about why you're applying and about what your interests are, because the more that recommendation letter sort of reflects what you're also saying as opposed to being perfunctory, he's a great guy, I really enjoy working with him, always brings lots of good ideas, the more that it tends to resonate with the committee. So we just want you to be thinking about that. And it's actually really good advice for any time you need a recommendation at any time in your life. And then finally, find examples of leadership in your own work experience and stories. We often go by, there's a book that's called How to Toot Your Own Horn Without Blowing It. And so one of the things that we want you to do is really toot your own horn. Again, we sometimes tend to use this we team player language, and we have a hard time being able to distinguish what role we played. And so, yes, a successful project is everybody's good work, but let us know what role you played in that. You know, are you an idea person? Are you a champion behind the scenes? Are you a project manager? Like, what role do you see yourself, even in a collective experience of getting something done? And I would say to push beyond the convening to the results and the outcomes. We like to talk a lot in philanthropy as if somehow getting together is already an act. And every now and then, some of our committee members who spend as much time in philanthropy as outside philanthropy are like, I'm so tired of hearing about meetings. I want to know what happened at the meeting. I want to know what happened as a result of the meeting. And so really push through, because we all know organizing is a big and important thing, but help us to see where you see traction happening from any organizing or convening that you were able to bring together. Let me pause there for a minute. That's a lot of information. Edward, any thoughts you have about the application itself and how to, you know?
The really important part you really nailed, in the sense that we know that oftentimes as it's easy to get caught up in the jargon of philanthropy, and we know it just becomes something that kind of flows naturally in folks' space, and as you reference the idea of folks avoiding that jargon and the philanthropies, is this really something we can't emphasize enough, because this is a really special space, and it is one in which we don't want folks to feel very feel as if it's a rote, a very traditional experience. So to that end, we invite you all to think creatively, think about what this means to you, and I'll even go a little bit further, not to make it more competitive, but if you know of others that you've encountered that just may not even know about ABFE and know about this experience, I invite them to submit, or to at least consider it. Share the information with them. It may not be something that you're quite ready for this year, but maybe it is something that would be of greater benefit to a colleague or to someone that you know in your community, or even any other parts of the country. So just invite you to think about it. Think about it with that kind of a lens, and submit or recommend as you see fit.
Yeah, and I'll just say I talked to an applicant once several years ago, and she said, I've spent so much time learning how to write the way philanthropy wants you to write, that she was like, that I think sometimes I forget that I speak another language. And so I just want to encourage you to think about your work and your leadership from a standpoint of your own voice and the level of satisfaction and enjoyment that you get out of the work that you do. Bianca, you got anything for us?
We actually do have a question, Lynn, and it's an interesting one. The question is about how many fellows are chosen a year typically, and how does that process actually occur?
Terrific, great question. So we have 10 fellows a year. I will tell you that we typically get about 30 to 32 applications, so it is competitive but not crazy in that sense. As you can imagine, there's a lot of folks out there, and sometimes it's a timing issue about when is this the right time for me to do it in my life and my work? Is this can I get to the leadership summit, which is mandatory? Is that a good week for me? Those kinds of things. The way that the process works, when we close out applications at midnight on June 2nd, we turn them into PDFs. We have a committee, a selection committee that is made up of some ABFE members of long standing who have been selection committee members for quite some time. We have some alumni fellows who serve on the committee. We have someone from an executive search firm who does nothing but review resumes and applications and performs quite a number of searches within philanthropy, so he brings a really great and different perspective. All of us on staff also read applications. So all of the applications are read by all the committee members, and they score the different parts. We have a formula. So the essay questions count for the most. I think they're doubled. Your resume, so you get a score for each of your essays, and your total score is then doubled in our formula. You get points for your resume, experience, other kinds of things. You get points for your letter of recommendation. And then we have a score, a number that is, because sometimes an application is stronger than the sum of its parts, right? And so we also have a number that is just the overall feeling that I got from reading this application is, and they assign a number there, and that score is also doubled. We then have a selection call with all the committee members, and we look at, and then we really talk about it, because at the end of the day, we are creating a class or a cohort. So we will look at, obviously, strength of scores. We look at geography. We look at area of interest. We look at gender balance, because we want to put together at the same time a cohort that will really both challenge you and support you. So if we have 10 applications from Chicago, I can guarantee you that there won't be 10 Chicago fellows, because you guys could get together, you know, in Chicago. We want you to build that network in a national sort of way. And so we do that in a selection call. We're sort of looking at the strength of the field. We're looking at other demographics, and we sort of craft a class that we think will not only be exciting to work with, but really enriching for each member of the class. Edward, do you want to add anything to that question? Or that answer, I guess.
Yeah. Just that ideally we wish we could have more, but which may happen in the not too distant future. But for now, it is a very close-knit group. But we are exploring if and when there may be some opportunities to expand that.
Yeah, and and again, I use this language all the time. I mean, this fellowship is, I can't emphasize enough what a gift it is. It's about a $15,000 to $18,000 per person experience when we add up all of the costs and the budgets, and which, fellows or you guys will get for $750. I cannot emphasize what a huge investment it is, and ABFE is willing to make that investment, but as you can imagine, we have to keep it just a few folks at a time for now. Anything else, Bianca, before I move on?
Yes, we have a question about what is the typical experience level from the fellows. I'm asking for clarification, but I'm assuming that this is in reference to their career experience or philanthropic experience.
Yeah. Great, terrific. So we use the word like 2+ years in philanthropy, and a lot of times folks might have 2 or 3 years in philanthropy, but they had a whole career before they got to that side of the table, which we certainly understand and appreciate. I will tell you that for the most part, at least since I've been with the program, fellows sort of range from, I think the youngest fellow we ever had was in his late 20s. And I would say that typically they are somewhere in their early to mid 30s, and they may have had a variety of work experience before they landed in philanthropy, but they bring, that wealth of experience together. I would say that folks who are like really brand spanking new to philanthropy, i.e. they have been in their position for, a year or so, don't always fare as well with the committee, just because you may not be able to talk as critically about what philanthropy can do and the ways in which philanthropy can be used in new and innovative ways to make real change. But otherwise, people have had different kinds of roles in philanthropy. We have had a grants administrator. We have had folks who have been on the donor relations side in a community foundation. We've had program officers of all kinds of varieties. We've even had folks who, there's some foundations that are really like operating foundations, and so they are kind of more a direct service-y philanthropy kind of person. So there's been a real range from that perspective. I would not say that there is any perfect resume or formula that says, you're going to zoom in. It's just been a real mixed bag. The other thing that I will say is that there are quite a few people who apply to the fellowship because they're just not sure philanthropy is for them. And they're kind of wondering, like, I thought I'd landed in heaven, but maybe this is not that place, and want to really understand it better. And I'm very proud to say that the majority of folks, even those who came in that way, have found a way to make philanthropy their own, and to stay in the work, which is, retention in the field is a huge goal of ABFE. And so we're thrilled that people have been able to do that, and part of it is because they figured out how to really be authentic in this work, despite the constraints and the culture of the institution that they're in. Let me pause there for a second. Edward, do you want to add
something, Lynn?
Yeah, please, Bianca.
Okay, so I just also wanted to add for all of you that applying for the fellowship is definitely not a one and done situation. If for any reason you aren't selected for this year, you are provided the opportunity to check in with Lynn or other members of the staff and just ask what your application needed, or what is something that you could have added that would have increased the opportunity for you to be selected for the following year, and you can apply as many times as you like. Is definitely not something that is held against you, and the selection committee actually encourages people to reapply.
Yes, and
right.
Yeah, and we always have, and there are several folks out there who shall remain nameless who did apply more than once, and without any challenge in that sense.
Yeah. I was going to also add, this is suggested reading for those that are on the call, that Lynn, to your points earlier, I would encourage you all to read a report that we released last year. We'll release again likely another report on the same subject next year, and it's called The Exit Interview, and it chronicles 5 professionals in the field, 5 black professionals in the field, and kind of their experiences in philanthropy. And it also aggregates some data from our Black Philanthropic Network community, different organizations around the country that queried or submitted the query to their members to get a sense of the temperature, the sentiment of blacks in the field of philanthropy, professionals in the field around the country through that report as well. It just gives a good sense of, I think what often I hear when people read the report is, wow, this was really speaking to me. They see themselves in the words of others that have reflected their views and thoughts about the field through the exit interview. Now, of course, our goal is not to have that many exit interviews unless you're exiting one job in philanthropy and moving into another one in the field, or leading as a philanthropic leader or as a philanthropist, a donor. So we want to encourage that kind of a transfer, not from those that are leaving the field, because the more that we have in the field, it really does give us greater leverage around issues that are more closely impacting black communities, which is a primary focus of us at ABFE.
Great, thanks. All right.
I have another question.
Oh, okay, great.
So, Lynn, you mentioned an age range and examples of the type of positions that we've typically had in fellows in the past. would you discourage someone who is already in a leadership role or someone who is older than their mid-30s to consider this opportunity?
Absolutely not. And what you'll notice is I didn't put an upper range on that age range, and in part because I don't actually know how old our oldest fellow was when they did the fellowship. I will tell you that we have had a fellow who was already president of a foundation at the time that she did the fellowship. She was president of a small foundation in New York. I think she probably had maybe 2 other staff members besides her. And she has since moved on to be CEO of a larger foundation since she did her fellowship, and another fellow has moved into her seat as a president. So yes, I believe, and in part because so much of the fellowship is the individualized coaching that you get with EVA and the leadership assessment and the 360, I believe that there is something in this fellowship for everyone, regardless of where you are in your career. The likelihood that you had this kind of intense coaching and a guide to really take you through a critical and constructive examination of your own strengths and how to build upon those. In our field, it's pretty rare. You know, corporate America will, you know, give you a coach and do these other kinds of things, especially if they see you as somebody of high potential. But that doesn't always happen in other fields, and yet the work is important and amazing. So I actually believe that wherever you are in your career, that there is something in here for you. And I guess I just wanted to frame it that way just to give people a sense of what has been sort of typical. And again, to say that I think for the folks who are earlier in their career, they may not be quite ready for the fellowship yet. They may not get as much out of it as I think somebody who's a little bit more senior and therefore has enough different work experiences to say, okay, here's the part that I'm responsible for, and here's where I want to go next. I hope that answers the question. But thank you for asking that, because that was important. Yeah.
Yes, and I have another one.
Okay.
If you want to ask before you move on to the next slide.
I don't know what the next slide is. Go ahead and ask it. I'll go ahead and skip to the next slide, too.
So the next question is, do you have any examples of community-based learning projects that have been completed by fellows in the past?
Oh, yeah, great. Great question. All right, community-based learning projects. They have kind of morphed and changed over the years. So let me give you a few examples. One community-based learning project is a fellow kind of took a lot of the principles of the fellowship and some other community leadership kinds of things and designed a grassroots leadership training program for neighborhood folks and grassroots organization leaders in her area. So she was able to get a lot of her grantees and the neighborhood block association and people like that. And she built a community-based leadership program for folks in her community. And she built that in the year after her fellowship and launched it a year after her fellowship. It probably means 3 or 4 classes of folks have gone through there, and she's since been promoted to president of her foundation. So she's not only advanced her own career, but now she's got this really strong cadre of folks who've gone through a leadership training program that she designed. We had a fellow who is of African descent living in the Chicago area, and she was really interested in the African American and the African issues that were going on in and around Chicago. And as somebody who had kind of a foot in both worlds, she could really see this. And so she brought together leaders from the African American community and the African immigrant community together to start to talk about how they could begin to advocate around issues that were impacting both of them, particularly with philanthropic institutions, so that they were not necessarily seeing each other so much as competitors for dollars, but in a more cooperative and understanding way. Good golly, what else have we done? There have been some research projects. You know, two fellows actually really sort of built, I guess revitalize is a better word, but it was kind of building it from scratch, a Blacks in Philanthropy group in their area, which had gone kind of dormant for a lack of leadership for a number of years. And they revitalized it, and it's still going strong to this day. It's actually one of the stronger ones that we have. Let me see. Some guys organized early on some really powerful Black men and boys works and summit kind of work, and they did it it was great. There was somebody in Flint, Michigan who organized one, and there was somebody in Atlanta who organized one, and they flew to each other so they could bring, the perspective of another part of the country together. One guy ran for office, and he ran for office and is now the only Black member of the Birmingham School Board from a majority white district. So yeah, people are doing all kinds of different kinds of things. One decided to build a financial literacy program for her church members. And yeah, so all kinds of things, like really addressing an issue or a need in the community and an area of passion and interest for themselves. How's that? I'm just trying to think if there are any other, lots of grassroots sort of organizing, taking those, those great community members whose proposals come across our desk in foundations, and they, and they just can't get a hearing, and sort of working with those groups to get them in through some capacity work and some advice to get them to a place where they can get a grant, or where they're working together in ways that they're finding other resources besides, the institutional philanthropy that just keeps saying no. So I've seen quite a number of projects like that as well over the years. How am I doing, Bianca?
I'd say you're doing
Did that
great.
generate a whole bunch more? Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you answer a question and five more pop up. So that's yeah. So I'm just like.
No, we haven't had any other ones pick up here, so I think you did a good job of explaining and sharing what has happened in the past.
Okay, terrific. So again, the deadline is June 1st, 2015. That's a Monday, so you have right up until Monday night. So you have the weekend, and then you can, notifications will be by July 17th. We typically then, we ask you for a little bit of paperwork, a photograph, a little bio, some other kinds of things, and then we typically do the announcement, nationwide and through the ABFE network right after Labor Day, because we figure August is one of those months that people aren't always checking their email. And the cost for the year to those chosen for the fellowship is $750. And we will absolutely take into consideration requests for financial assistance. You can just write a letter that sort of explains your situation, and you can also upload that through the online application portal. These are our email addresses, and you can reach any of us if you have any further questions as you go along. And let me pause there and see if there are any more questions. How are we doing, Bianca?
No more questions here.
No more questions here. All right, everybody. I can't tell you how, it's a great program. It's a lot of fun. There are We have started now to have alumni fellows who help us design the summit experience in their hometown, which has been fabulous fun, and it gives them a chance to meet all kinds of movers and shakers and think about, what do I want people to know about my community, and what do I want to have their perspective on, you know, the water I drink and the air I breathe, because sometimes we can't even see our own hometown anymore because we know all the relationships and the players, and fresh eyes come into town and say, wow, like look at how much opportunity is here for this kind of connection. So we do a lot of great work as a part of our on-the-ground experience in the summit, because we often catalyze very different conversations than were happening there before we came. And of course, you know, you have 15 African Americans roll into town asking a lot of questions and having a lot of fun. People notice. So we also like that part of our experience. We sometimes have people get up from, like, at a table in a restaurant and come over and go like, who are you guys? And, you know, and what are you doing here? So it's a fun experience, and a good time is had by all, I think, on a leadership summit. Edward and Bianca just had their first, so I'll let you guys say whether or not it's fun, in addition to the hard work and the great relationships.
Good, Bianca.
Oh, did you guys hear me laughing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did hear you laughing.
Sorry about that. No, it's definitely fun. But I think what was more than the fun aspect of it is everyone being committed to the work and committed to both Birmingham and to their whole fellowship experience. And this group has been really great about that in general, which has been welcoming for me, adding to the fellowship for the first time in my experience here at ABFE.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I echo it
sorry.
from the standpoint of, I think, you know, and in some ways it's, you know, there's the fun, there's the work, and there's the therapy.
Yeah.
There's a cathartic experience that is felt, that it seems it's palpable, just in witnessing and how folks not only interact, how they communicate and interrelate. Since the fellowship, when we were all in Napa together, through social media as they stay connected, it all becomes a very special space for everyone. And I think given the heaviness of so much of what goes on, and even so much of what purposeful people in philanthropy have to really witness and know, we can't do it all, we can't solve it all, it becomes a space for just, you know, shoulders, to have shoulders and have ears and even have voices to lean on, to listen to, and to share and to listen. It's an awesome experience, and it goes beyond just that time.
Absolutely. It's funny because people sort of identify themselves by the city where they had their summit, you know, so they're the Flint 1 folks and the Flint 2 folks and the Newark 1 and the Newark 2. But it's because the relationship is so strong, and it actually makes you feel very passionately about a city that you may not know anything about, because we also get to know the people there, and we get to know the struggles and the opportunities, and to see how certain issues are also reflected in our home community or how they're different. I can tell you I read the national section of the newspaper very differently because of this experience, because I see things will pop up in a city I know, you know, because of the fellowship, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to call so-and-so and see what's behind the reporter's words, or there's the mayor of Flint, you know, and we've spent time with him, and you know, and how's it going, and what's happening with his master plan. So it really is an opportunity to do what I hope you will find is a very different way of exploring a community, and a pretty fearless way. We have a saying, which is to blame it on ABFE, and so we'll often say, when you're in the fellowship, if you get kind of a wild idea, you want to call somebody on the phone and find out how they got where they were, or other kinds of things, make a coffee date with them, we really encourage you to do it. And if you need to, you can blame it on ABFE. I'm in this fellowship and I really need to spend an hour talking to a CFO. You know, can I come talk to you? Most people love talking about themselves, but we don't always take that risk to go try that out. So as you can imagine, after hearing that for a whole year, we're in a very different place. We are bolder and and more assertive, and therefore actually better advocates for ourselves and for the people that we love. And that's what it's all about. I can't remember if I have another slide, and you're going to see my messy desktop if I don't. Yeah, I'm at the end. Okay. Any more questions? Look at that. 60 minutes on the dot.
No questions. Perfect wrap up there.
All right. We recorded this, and we'll get a PDF of the slides out to you. You can find the application instructions and the essay questions in PDF form on our website and the link to the online application. We hope you'll consider applying. We'd love to get to know you better and learn more about you.